If anyone had told me 2 months ago that I'd be sneaking around with a woman twice my age, I'd have laughed and called them insane. Now, I just stare at my ceiling most nights, wondering what kind of lunatic I've become. It started in the most unremarkable way, at a laundromat of all places. I was 22, halfway through my last year of college, juggling classes and shifts at a local bookstore. I'd gone out that night, my hamper overflowing, because the machines in my apartment building were busted again. She walked in like she owned the place, and yet, she looked like she hated being there. You ever see someone who doesn't quite fit into the scene? Like their life is too big for the setting they're in? That was her. Gray hoodie, yoga pants, and this annoyed skull that somehow made her look alive, not angry. And that's what got me. She looked alive, not perfect, not polished, just real. I was tossing socks into a washer, trying not to look like a total idiot checking her out. She caught me anyway, gave me this look. Not flirty, not friendly, just one of those raised eyebrow glances that said, don't. So I didn't. But I kept looking. We ended up sitting across from each other in those stiff plastic chairs, both waiting on spin cycles. She was scrolling through her phone, ignoring the world, and I was pretending to read some article I'd pulled up just to avoid being the guy who keeps stealing glances. She sighed, loud and frustrated, then muttered something like, "Of course it eats the damn quarter." That's how we started talking. I had extra change and gave her a couple coins without saying much. She looked at me, really looked, for the first time. "Thanks," she said, and her voice was low, calm, and
Kind of worn out in the way people get when they've had a long week or a long year. Machines are rude, I said. She laughed barely. So are most people. We ended up talking through the rest of the wash cycle. Her name was Dana, 43.
she worked in marketing, used to live in New York, now stuck back in this small city taking care of her dad. Divorced 5 years, no kids. She said all this casually, like she was giving a weather update. I told her I was a student, English major, working part-time. When I said my name was Aaron, she smiled, just a little, and said, "You don't look like an Aaron." I asked what I'd look like. She shrugged. "You look like someone who's not sure if they should be talking to me." That was the moment. The hook. Her smile, when she said that, was the first one I'd seen that didn't feel forced. Like it hurt her face to do it, but she did it anyway. She forgot her laundry bag, and I offered to help carry her stuff to the car. It wasn't a move. I honestly wasn't thinking that way. She thanked me, and we stood there, outside her car, a little too long. "You're nice," she said, sort of surprised. "I'm really not," I replied. But she smiled again. "Maybe I'll see you here next week." She left before I could say anything else. I watched her drive off with laundry piled high in the back seat. I didn't know it yet, but that smile was the first one she'd meant in a very, very long time. I didn't plan on going back the next week. I told myself it was just laundry, that I'd do it in the building even if it meant carrying buckets of quarters and listening to the old dryer rattle like it was about to catch fire. But when Wednesday rolled around, I was standing in that same laundromat again with an almost empty hamper and clothes that didn't even need washing. She wasn't there. Not at first. I sat with a coffee, phone in my hand, pretending to scroll while checking the door every few seconds. I felt stupid waiting on someone 15 minutes early at a laundromat like I was on a blind date. She showed up 10 minutes later, same hoodie, same walk, eyes scanning the room before landing on me. There was no smile, no dramatic reaction, just a short nod and the kind of eye contact people give when they don't want to be caught looking happy. We didn't talk right away. She started her load, sat down across from me, pulled out her phone, and let the silence sit for a while. I thought maybe I misread everything the first time. Maybe I imagined a connection that didn't exist. Then she sighed and said, "Thought you said you weren't nice." I smiled without thinking and shrugged, trying not to look as relieved as I felt. I never said I wasn't pathetic. She laughed, not loudly, but it stayed with her longer this time. That second meeting turned into a third, and soon we were meeting every Wednesday night. We didn't plan it, didn't even exchange numbers at first. It was just this unspoken thing: laundry, conversation, coffee from the place across the street, and a quiet walk to her car that always ended with her thanking me and driving away. I learned more about her in those hours than I had about most girls I dated for months. She hated her job, but stayed for the paycheck. She had a brother she didn't talk to. She used to dance when she was younger, not professionally, just at clubs and weddings, but said she hadn't done it in years. She liked old movies, but never watched them anymore. Said it reminded her too much of things that didn't happen. She also asked about me. Not the surface stuff. She didn't care about my GPA or my favorite band. She asked why I hadn't dropped out yet, what I really wanted to do after college, if I was close with my mom, if I ever regretted something and never told anyone. I told her more than I should have, probably. I told her about my dad walking out when I was 14, about my ex who cheated on me with someone from her church group, about feeling like I was drifting through school just to make other people happy. She never judged, never gave me some motivational speech or told me everything would be fine. She just listened like she had nothing better to do. That was rare. The first time someone noticed us together was during week 4. I didn't know the guy, just another student, maybe a year younger than me, loading his machine while Dana and I sat too close on those hard plastic chairs. He looked at us, then looked again.
Then I could feel the judgment in his face, that weird discomfort people show when something doesn't fit their picture of how the world should look. I didn't care. She noticed it too. When he left, she leaned toward me and said, "You know they think I'm your professor or some sad divorced woman clinging to her youth." I didn't say anything. I just looked at her and said, "You're not."
Not sad. She didn't smile this time. She just stared at the floor and whispered, "You don't know that." We never talked about what this was. It didn't feel like dating, not in the usual sense. We weren't hooking up.
We hadn't even touched beyond a couple awkward shoulder nudges, and that one time she handed me her keys and our fingers brushed. But there was tension, not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that makes every second feel loaded, like if you said the wrong thing, the whole thing would collapse. I started noticing her more outside the laundromat. I found myself checking the marketing building on campus, even though she
Didn't
didn't.
work there. Once I saw someone with similar hair and my heart jumped until I realized it wasn't her. I didn't know what I wanted from her, but I knew I wanted more of this. Then came the letter. Not a text, not an email, an actual letter shoved under my door in an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence. She's old enough to be your mother. Grow up. That was it. No name, no signature, just a cheap printer font and an attempt at shaming me. I stood there holding it like it was radioactive. I don't know who sent it. Maybe someone from campus. Maybe someone who had seen us. I lived in student housing. It wouldn't take much to figure out who I was. I didn't show her the letter, but I kept thinking about it. I couldn't help it. It hit something deep, not because it was right, but because it was exactly the kind of thing people say when they don't want to understand something. That night, I didn't go to the laundromat. I didn't even text her, though I finally had her number. I just sat in my room, letter on the desk, wondering if I was being selfish. If maybe this whole thing was just filling a hole in both of us that wasn't meant to be shared. Around midnight, she called. First time she'd done that. "You okay?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Someone knows." She was quiet for a while. "Do you care?" I didn't know what to say. When I finally spoke, I told her the truth. "Yeah, I think I do."
Then maybe we should stop, she said, and she didn't sound angry, just tired. But neither of us hung up. We stayed on the line, saying nothing until the sun came up. We didn't talk for almost a week after that call. No texts, no calls, nothing. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, especially that last part, how she said maybe we should stop, but still didn't hang up.
It messed with me. I wanted to believe it was just hesitation, that she was scared like I was, not that she had already made up her mind. I walked past the laundromat twice that week without going in. I kept expecting to see her car parked outside, but it never was. On Friday night, I finally broke and called her. She didn't answer. I tried again an hour.
Hour later. Still nothing. I stopped trying. That weekend, I got drunk with a few people from my program. I tried to act like everything was normal, but I couldn't focus on anything anyone was saying. Everyone around me was either complaining about midterms or talking about where they were applying for internships. I realized I didn't care about any of it. I excused myself early and walked home alone. The streets were quiet, and I kept thinking about that damn letter. Whoever sent it probably got exactly what they wanted, but it didn't feel like they had one. It felt like I had just stepped out of something real and
Now I was stuck pretending I'd never been in it. Monday night, I got a text from her. Just one line, "Are you awake?" I replied immediately. 10 minutes later, I was standing outside her apartment. She lived in a quiet part of town near the highway, not far from the bookstore I worked at. I'd never been to her place. She hadn't invited me until now. She opened the door in a long t-shirt and sweatpants, hair tied up, no makeup, no expression. She looked tired. I didn't say anything. She stepped aside and let me in. Her apartment was small but clean, with bookshelves full of old hardcovers and a coffee table stacked with unopened mail. She walked into the kitchen and came back with 2 mugs of tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. We sat on the couch, not touching, not looking at each other directly. Finally, she said, "I told myself this was nothing." I nodded. "Me too." She looked at me and said, "But I felt it. I feel it every time I see you." I didn't answer. She sipped her tea. "You know what the worst part is?" she asked. "It's not the age thing. I've stopped caring about that. It's that I feel like myself when I'm with you." I forgot what that felt like. I wanted to tell her I felt the same, that she made everything else seem pointless in comparison, but I didn't know how to say it without sounding desperate or young. Instead, I asked, "So what do we do?" She didn't respond. The silence stretched on until it started to feel uncomfortable. I was about to say something else when she suddenly leaned her head on my shoulder. No words, no movement, just her body resting against mine like she needed a break from standing on her own. I let her stay there. That night we didn't sleep together. We didn't even kiss. We just talked, more than we had in all those laundromat nights combined. We talked about her divorce, how it wasn't messy legally, but ruined her emotionally. She told me about her ex, how he'd called her boring, how he'd said she wasn't exciting anymore, like she was a used-up version of the woman he married. She didn't cry when she said it, but her voice cracked once, and I could tell she hadn't told that to anyone in a long time. I told her about my mom, how she raised me alone, how she still called every Sunday to check if I was eating enough. She smiled and said my mom sounded like someone she'd like.
it was probably nothing, just a kind thing to say, but it felt like something solid in a week that had felt like slipping on ice. We kept talking until it was light outside. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. I turned to her and said, "This is real, right?" She didn't say anything. She just nodded. I left, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel like the ground
Under me was about to fall away. But good things don't stay quiet forever. The witness showed up 3 days later. It wasn't even someone close, just some guy from my comparative literature class, the kind who always had something to say during group projects, but never did any of the actual work. I'd seen him in the laundromat before, though we never spoke. Apparently, he saw us leave together that night I brought her the extra quarters. I found out because someone tagged me in a group chat screenshot posted on the campus subreddit. The post wasn't even that bad. It was a joke, something like, when your TA's mom picks him up from class and they look way too cozy. Most people laughed. A few defended me, saying people should mind their business. But it didn't matter. The image of us walking together, her hand barely brushing mine, was enough. I tried to tell myself it was just internet noise, but the damage was done. I started getting weird looks on campus. A few people made jokes to my face, pretending not to know what they were really saying. One guy actually said, "Damn bro, you really out here playing MILF bingo." I wanted to hit him, but I just walked away. I couldn't risk blowing up when people already had their minds made up. I didn't tell Dana. I didn't want her to feel.
feel what I felt. I thought maybe if I kept it to myself, it would fade. But I knew I was lying to both of us. She wasn't dumb. She could feel something was off.
When we met again on Friday, she didn't ask directly, but she looked at me like she knew I was holding something back. She asked, "Are you sure this isn't going to ruin you?" I laughed, more bitter than I intended. "It might, but I don't want to stop." She didn't smile. She just said, "Then don't." But I could tell the wall was already going up between us, brick by quiet brick. The first person I told was my roommate Devin. Not because I trusted him more than anyone, but because he was the first one who directly asked. He walked in while I was sitting at my desk with Dana's contact pulled up on my screen. Not calling, not texting, just staring at her name like I was hoping the phone would make the decision for me. He leaned on the doorframe and said, "So, are you really seeing that woman from the laundromat? Or is the internet just having a slow week?" I didn't say anything right away. He waited, arms crossed, expecting denial, maybe a joke, something to take the pressure off. I just said, "Yeah." It came out flat and honest. He didn't move for a second, then stepped into the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "You know people are going to talk forever if you keep this going," he said. "They already are," I answered. "I don't care anymore." That was a lie, but I said it like I meant it. Devin wasn't a bad guy. He didn't lecture me or act disgusted. He just looked at me like I was someone doing something reckless and personal, like someone who knew what they were doing was dangerous, but couldn't stop. "She cool?" he asked finally. "Yeah," I said, softer than I intended. "Really cool." He nodded. "Then just be ready when it gets worse. People are going to find ways to twist it, make it ugly." He was right. But I had already crossed that line. The day everything changed was a week later. Dana had invited me to this community lecture thing she was helping run, nothing fancy, just a panel on digital marketing trends for small businesses. She worked with this local nonprofit that tried to help small startups with online presence and branding. I almost didn't go, but I could tell it meant something to her. She said I wouldn't understand her life unless I saw it from the inside, and she was right. I sat in the back of the small conference room in an uncomfortable chair next to retirees and two women who looked like they were from some local boutique. She didn't look nervous up there. She looked like she belonged. Sharp, direct, confident. That Dana was different than the one in sweatpants who fell asleep with her head on my chest. After the talk, she introduced me to a few of her colleagues. Most were polite, professional, probably didn't think twice about me. But one guy, his name was Grant, looked at me for too long. He was around her age, maybe a little older, wearing a suit that looked like he never took it off. When Dana said my name and told him I was a friend, he smiled the way people do when they already know too much. "Oh, you're Aaron," he said, like he was filling in a blank. "Nice to finally meet you." I didn't say anything. Dana's expression shifted, not fear exactly, but concern. We moved on quickly after that. An hour later, back at her apartment, I asked, "Who is that guy?" She hesitated, then sat on the edge of her kitchen counter, arms crossed. "He's no one. Just a coworker who thinks he knows everything." I pushed back gently. "He seemed like someone who knows we're more than friends." She didn't deny it. "He might," she said. "I don't know. I haven't told anyone. But people talk. Maybe someone saw us. Maybe he's guessing." I looked at her, waiting. And what if he tells someone? What if people at work start looking at you the way people on campus look at me? Dana stared out the window like she could see the question written in the sky. "Then I deal with it," she said. "I've dealt with worse." I believed her, but I also knew something had shifted again. The gap between us wasn't about age anymore. It was about how long she'd been learning to live with judgment and how new I was to it. We agreed to keep things low for a while. Not a breakup. Not even a pause. Just less visible. Fewer coffee shop meetings, no more laundromat catch-ups, and definitely no more public appearances. I hated it. She hated it more. But it made things easier for a minute. Then came the panel reunion dinner. The nonprofit was throwing a small event for the speakers and a few partners. Dana said she wasn't going to bring me. Said it would just make things messy. I told her I understood. I didn't, but I said I did. A few hours into the event, Devin called me. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. "Hey, dude, I'm downtown," he said, voice tense. "That thing you weren't invited to?" "Yeah, someone posted a photo already." I sat up straight. "What kind of photo?" He paused. "It's you. And her. From last week. You're standing together after the lecture. Someone edited it, wrote some dumb caption about you being her intern." My stomach dropped. "It's blowing up?" "Not yet. But if it spreads, people will recognize her." It's not just students who follow that account. I thanked him and hung up. I sent Dana the photo. She didn't reply. 10 minutes later, she called. I need you to come here, she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was sharp, like she was already 10 steps ahead of whatever storm was coming. When I got there, she was pacing her kitchen, phone in one hand, wine glass in the other. They know, she said. Some of the board members. One of them called me before you did. Told me I might want to be more discreet with who I invite to events. I didn't say anything. I wanted to scream at him, she continued. I wanted to ask what part of my life I'm allowed to live without someone thinking it's inappropriate. Her hands were shaking. I walked over and took the glass from her, set it down. I can go, I said. If this ruins everything for you, I'll go. She looked at me like I'd just insulted her. You think that's what I want? To protect some dumb job by throwing away the only thing that feels real right now. She stepped closer, almost angry now. You think I'm ashamed of you? I shook my head, not sure what I believed. I think you deserve better than having to explain me to everyone. She didn't respond for a long time. Then she said, let them ask. I'm tired of pretending I don't want what I want. That night, we didn't hide. She held my hand when we walked down her street, even when a couple neighbors waved from their porch. It didn't feel brave. It felt like something overdue. But I also knew we'd crossed another line, one that we couldn't walk back. The following week was quiet in the wrong way. Not peaceful, just filled with gaps where a text should have come in, pauses during conversations that used to flow easily, and mornings where I stared at my phone without touching it. Dana and I still talked, still met up, but there was this weight behind every sentence, like we were both waiting for someone to knock on the door and tell us it was over. Her job didn't fire her. The board decided to revisit certain conduct expectations and told her she might want to consider a sabbatical, unofficially, of course. She didn't tell me this right away. I found out 3 days later when I dropped by and found her packing up her laptop into a box. She said she was taking a break. When I asked if it had anything to do with me, she said, it has everything to do with how people think this looks. I didn't push further. I just helped her load the box into her car, and we drove in silence. That night we argued for the first time. Not loudly. There wasn't any shouting.
But it was the kind of argument where the words sting more because you say them too calmly. I asked if she regretted all of it. She asked if I really thought I could handle something like this long term. I told her I wasn't the one being forced out of anything. She told me that just because I could walk around pretending none of this mattered didn't mean it didn't break things. I said maybe we should stop. She said maybe we already had.
Neither of us slept much that night. 2 days later, I was asked to present my thesis project early, part of some showcase where selected students gave a brief talk to faculty, a few local sponsors, and some alumni. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. I almost said no. I wasn't in the right headspace, and the idea of standing in front of a room full of people pretending I had it all figured out felt ridiculous. But my advisor insisted, said it would be good for visibility. I knew what that meant. A chance to look mature and presentable and professional for future opportunities, and more importantly, a distraction. I didn't expect Dana to show up. She didn't say she was coming. She walked in 10 minutes after the thing started and sat in the back row. She wore a black blazer and jeans, hair tied back, no smile, no emotion. Just there, watching. I kept losing my train of thought while speaking, catching myself scanning the crowd for her face. I could feel people watching me, but I didn't care. At the end of my presentation, during the Q and A, someone asked about influences. I hesitated for a second and then said, most of my best writing came after I met someone who challenged how I saw the world. Not in the way people usually mean that. More in the sense that I stopped caring about sounding smart and started caring about saying something honest. No one clapped louder than her. Afterward, people came up to shake hands, give compliments, say things that didn't matter. By the time I made it to the back of the room, Dana was gone. I found her outside near the bike racks, leaning on the wall with her arms crossed. She didn't look at me when I walked up. I said, thanks for coming. She nodded. It was good. I waited, unsure if I should say more, then added, I didn't know you'd be here. She finally looked at me. I needed to hear what you'd say when you weren't just talking to me. We stood there for a while. I wanted to ask what we were now. I wanted her to say something definitive, something I could either accept or walk away from. But she didn't offer any clarity. She just said, "You'll be done with school soon." I nodded. "Yeah, couple of months." She sighed. "And then what? You leave the city? You start a new job? Do we keep sneaking around in coffee shops, pretending it's not serious?" I didn't have an answer. I told her I didn't want to lose her. She asked me if I knew what holding on would actually look like. I didn't say yes, because that would have been dishonest. But I didn't say no either. The week after that, we tried something new. We didn't call it a breakup. We didn't stop talking, but we gave each other space. She focused on figuring out what she wanted to do next, whether she'd go back to work, switch careers, leave town. I focused on graduation, getting through finals, and trying to understand if what we had was real enough to survive a pause. We didn't make promises. We didn't say we'd wait, but we didn't say goodbye. A month later, I saw her again at a bookstore downtown. Not planned. She was with someone from her old team. I walked past, and she saw me. Her face lit up for a second, then softened. I smiled. She smiled back. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. Some stories don't end. Some just stop being told for a while. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's not. But I'll never forget how she looked at me the first time she smiled.
Like someone had reminded her she was still here. And maybe that's all I was ever supposed to be.